All right, now let's go ahead and look at this second spread. I'm going to use a couple of different techniques on this one, and I'm going to go ahead and kind of match what I've done on this side over on here. On this one you can see I'm using a pretty bright color palette, so I've got Abandoned Coral, Picked Raspberry, I've got some Spiced Marmalade, and some Fossilized Amber. And on this one I'm just going to go ahead and start going to town on the background. Let's go ahead and spritz, and this time I'm going to be a little bit more aggressive with using the water to get some oxidizing effects. So let's start just spritz and dry. Okay, now as I'm drying, I'm going to use my water bottle here and put some bigger droplets down, because that's going to give me these really cool, you can see them already starting to show up here, these larger drips that have, as the ink, the pigment and the dye ink separate from each other, they leave these fantastic circles all over, and these bigger drops will give that to you. So I like to do that as a second layer on top of the background. Now we're going to do something fun and a little bit different with the stencils. This is my ornamental petals screen, and it's a mask. You can tell all of my stencils are pretty well loved. And I'm going to do just a little bit, I'm going to come back in here and just add a little bit more color on top of what's on my sponges. Because now I want to do a little bit of this. Actually, I'm going to just a little bit more. I don't want to completely cover up all of this nice work that I've done here in the background, but what I'm going to do is now spray my stencil and get it out from under the, and I'm going to turn it over onto this background, and I'm going to take a dry paper towel and just blot. I'm going to lift that off and blot again. But you can see now how I've used the stencil to pull the ink back off, and now I can see that pattern in the background. So let's go ahead and go back, and I'm going to do a little bit more of that in another area. And I don't know that you really need to put any fresh ink down. I experimented a little bit and I found that I got a bit better of a print from my stencil when I added just a little bit of fresh ink that I had not yet dried. So now that is a nice, cool effect that we've got here on that. So I don't want to lose this in the layers that I'm going to put on top, so I'm going to get my Distress Glaze, and I followed Tim's suggestion. I've got my little sponge already stored in there, so I just grab that, and I'm just going to coat this entire background with the glaze, which is going to make it instantly waterproof, so that now I can work on top of it, but none of what's underneath is going to come up to the top layers, and I can go ahead and preserve these nice little patterns I've got from my stencils. Dry paper towel and just buff it. You can see got that nice bright background. So next I'm going to take, this is my ornamental medallion stencil, and let's get, how about candied apple? Let's take a nice bright red. And I'm just going to add this medallion onto the background. we've got that, and I'm going to go ahead and just squirt it because I do want to get that more indistinct look that comes when you wet it down. And you can see, I'll lift this up, see how the water beads on top now that I've got that Distress Glaze down on top of there? So you can see that it's not going to do anything to the layers underneath it, and it'll just kind of wipe off in the places where I don't want it. So my medallions are done, and I didn't get any seepage from underneath, but I've still got that nice oxidized look on top. So now I want to do one more layer of stenciling, and I'm going to get peacock feathers, because how could I not have the color peacock feathers to go with my peacock feathers stencil. So go ahead and get that, and then I'm just going to kind of randomly get some of these feathers on top. And again, I want to go nice and opaque with the inks. I want to get really good coverage on there. I like to take the elements off the edge. It really grounds everything. I did get a little of this where I didn't want it, but because I've got the Distress Glaze underneath, I can just come through with a baby wipe and wipe off those little edges that show where I don't want them. I just have to make sure I don't wipe off any of the stenciled areas. Now I do clean these off of my stencils, because usually if I'm working with anything, a pigment ink of any kind, I clean it off. But I take the baby wipe in my stencil, put it on a piece of scrap paper, and wipe that off. I'm going to go ahead and spritz, and then dry. I'm going to come back and add my edging so that I can frame the page. Now we've got another nice spread here, all ready for me to do some journaling or drawing or collage or whatever I want in between.